It's now my privilege to ask the Honorable Minister of Women Affairs to please make a presentation. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Honorable Minister of Information. Gentlemen of the press, yesterday, the Federal Executive Council approved the WE policy. The WE policy is Women Economic Empowerment. It is a policy dialogue that we've been working for over 1 year. We've traversed all around the country, the 36 states, having dialogue with the private sector, rural dwellers, to find the best way to empower women and get them into the mainstream of nation building. You'll agree with me that women constitute over 50% of the population, and the surest way to national development is to involve the total population of the country. If 50% of the population is neglected, it means the country cannot develop optimally. It's like a country walking with one leg. And this has been a dream we've been pursuing, and finally yesterday, Mr. President gave the stamp. It is a legacy that Mr. President is leaving behind by approving this women economic empowerment to help get women into the mainstream of financial plans to ensure that nation building, women are carried along in nation building. Thank you.
May I please call on the Honorable Attorney General of the Federation, Minister of Justice, to please present his memos.
Distinguished members of the press, as you are aware, there was an second extraordinary meeting of the Federal Executive Council that held yesterday, being Tuesday, the 23rd day of May 2023. 3 Federal Executive Council memos were presented by the Office of the Attorney General for consideration of the Council. And the 3 memos were indeed taken, deliberated upon, and approved. The first memo that was taken was a memo for the regularization of the public-private partnership arrangement between the Federal Ministry of Justice and Messiah's Nexus of South Africa, and it has to do with publication of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria and all Nigeria law reforms. By way of giving a historical insight as to what the contract is all about, this is about publication of the Compendium of Laws of the Federation. In 2003 and 2005, there was an agreement entered into between Federal Ministry of Justice and a company in South Africa, which contract has to do with continuous publication of the laws of Nigeria, having them compiled as a book for 15 years. Now, that contract was meant to be a rollover contract so that by way of a sustainable arrangement, we will be having compendium of laws of the Federation published periodically. That contract had eventually elapsed, and we felt there were numerous developments that set in after the expiration, while the contract was in place. Technological development set in, and a lot of other need, inclusive of the ICRC Act, inclusive, among others, the need for review, so as to factor the interest of Nigeria more. So it was arising from that the contract is now reviewed, one, to allow for the accommodation of the technological development that's set in, and indeed the application and operation of the ICRC Act as it relates to public-private partnership. So the implication is, with the approval of the Council, we will have a continuous publication of the laws of the Federation of Nigeria in form of a book and in a way and manner that it will conform with the quality and indeed international best practices associated with the quality. So that was the first memo that was taken by the Federal Executive Council, was deliberated upon and approved. The second memo is a memo relating to operationalization and deployment of federal government contracts administration system. When we came into office, we inherited an arbitral award liability of around $10 billion against the federal government, arising from a purported breach of a contract which is popularly known as P&ID. And then our assessment of the contract is the fact that a lot of discretion on the part of the lawyers responsible for vetting federal government contract was tolerated, which discretion now resulted in some level of overlooking of the major clauses that could have, at the end of the day, provided some level of protection to the interest of the federal government. But because there was no standardization and discretion on the part of lawyers was tolerated, unfortunately, we had a breach on account of which we were, a case was instituted against the federal government, and then an award of around $10 billion was eventually made against the interest of the federal government. So with that unfortunate situation in mind, the need have arisen for us to consider the best way that we can minimize the level of discretion being exercised by lawyers and bring about standardization in line with international best practices that can now accord protection to the interest of the federal government. And then the federal contract administration system was now put in place, which is now a digitalized arrangement that will be accommodative of international contracts and clauses that can now limit the exercise of discretion of the lawyers as it relates to the fundamental clauses in an agreement, which clauses must naturally protect the interest of the federal government, and then the need has equally arisen therefrom to ensure at the end of the day building exceptional capacity as it relates to the to the drafting of contracts and ensuring that certain clauses are developed in respect of which no discretion is given to the lawyers vetting contracts, so as to ensure going forward that the interest of the federal government is not compromised in the art of drafting contracts that are meant to be executed in Nigeria. So that memo was equally taken and approved. The third memo that was presented by the Office of the Attorney General is a memo for the implementation of public-private partnership arrangement also between the Federal Ministry of Justice and Messrs. Jafrex Integrated Services Limited for the publishing and marketing of the Court of Appeal specialized law reports. It is important to bring to your notice that our Court of Records, talking of the High Courts, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, among others, have a tradition of compiling their judgments on a daily basis. And those judgments are compiled and books are sold to lawyers to serve as a reference material for citation in court and determination of cases. We have around 20 Court of Appeal divisions across Nigeria. And for the purpose of having some level of consistency and uniformity in compilation process, we have in existence what is known as Court of Appeal specialized law reports over time. It started from West African Court of Appeal even before Nigeria gained independence, and that tradition has been sustained. So it is equally a memo presented seeking the approval of the Council to renew the agreement that has been in existence for the publication of this law report, but this time around taking into consideration the new innovations, with particular reference to the public-private partnership arrangement, which has not been the tradition before, and then the ICRC Act, which has not been in existence, and new innovations associated with technology, to have them accommodated in the contract going forward. The Council memo was presented, a Council memo which accommodated all these new innovations relating to the new law that is in place, relating to public-private partnership arrangement which has not been in place, and the technological component consideration. And then that memo was now presented before the Federal Executive Council for the purpose of restoring the publication of the Court of Appeal specialized law report. Law report is a compendium of the judgments of the Court of Appeal over time. Thank you very much, distinguished members.
Sure, you are aware that we had a valedictory FEC today, and what that means is that it is the last and final Federal Executive Council meeting by this administration. During that meeting, we adopted and the minutes of the two extraordinary FEC meetings, and at the same time, opportunity was given to every minister to make his own farewell speech. It's instructive to note that each and every minister present today, and I'm not aware of any that was absent, was given between 5 minutes to make his or her own valedictory speech. And I think largely everybody commended Mr. President and thanked Mr. President for the opportunity to serve the country at this level. Many also took the opportunity to reel out what his or her own ministry or department had achieved over the last 8 years. Of course, you know, there are about 3 classes or categories of ministers. There are ministers that have spent there are ministers that came in 2015 and all through were retained, 2015, 2023. There are ministers that came in 2019, so 2019, 2023, and there were the last batch of ministers that came in about 9 months ago. So everybody made his or her own valedictory speech depending on how long he or she had been occupying the position. But generally, I think it was just a glorious moment for all the ministers to thank the president, thank their colleagues, and also give gratitude to God that a journey that started in 2015 is ending, very well in 2023. It went, I think, everybody, including the Chief of Staff, Secretary to Government, Head of Service, the Vice President, all gave their valedictory speeches. And then the President responded, and I think largely he thanked all of us for our contribution and prayed for us in our next endeavor. And we, of course, he reiterated the fact that we should all go back to our offices so that we can carry out, we can carry out the assignments and tasks assigned to us in respect of the transition, program. For instance, tomorrow we'll all have to be present at the conferment of the national honors on both the president-elect and the vice president-elect. And at that occasion, I think the instrument of the handing over instrument will also be, given to the incoming president. That's Thursday. I think there's on Friday, I think there's Saturday, I think. Saturday. Yeah. On Friday, of course, there's the prayers. On Saturday, there will be public lecture. On Sunday, there will be a church service. And then on Monday, there will be the inauguration proper at the Eagle Square. And then there will be dinner in the evening, largely for visiting visiting heads of states and those who have been invited to the dinner. So governance continues until May 29th. Thank you very much.
The matter, the P&ID matter, has been argued adequately and reserved for judgment. Judgment is being awaited. That is the position. And it can come handy any moment from now. Thank you. Accusation has been a daily basis affair, even against the Attorney General and a lot of other ministers and the President and the Vice President. It stands as accusation, and you cannot stop people from accusing.
Sir, is it $460 or $460 million? Pardon? Dollars. I don't know anything about it. I have, but I don't know anything about it.